What's up, golf friends? This is Jim Colton, and this is the Driven Golf Podcast. This is episode 13. I'm here with my super producer / super looper, Joseph K. What's going on, Joseph?
What up, Jim? Man, you got my head bopping to that. I'm loving the intro.
Yeah, we got a new intro song straight out of the DG Beat Lab. But yeah, it's really great to be back in the lab with you, and really excited to kick off this episode. We've got Kate Smith, an Epson Tour professional golfer on the ladies' side, the development tour for the LPGA. I am willing to bet this weekend you spent a lot of time looking at the leaderboard of the Epson Tour.
I was tuned in. I think you can follow her on the leaderboard as Catherine Smith. Just recently married, actually. So Kate Smith Stroh now, I believe, in Instagram at 99 Kate Smith. Same thing with Twitter. So she's a great follow and excited to get into this episode.
Yeah, Kate's she's got a very interesting background. She is not only a professional golfer, but she co-owns a graphic design business with the golf broadcaster Shane Bacon. And really a fascinating background. Her development in golf is pretty interesting, growing up in Minnesota. And she has a record that I think will probably never be beaten. A little bit of a teaser there for this episode. And then later on in the episode, we have Andrew Lewis back to continue our conversation on just kind of scaling those scores down over time, not only for junior golfers, but I think for all golfers involved. Last episode, we talked about sort of the mental side, the decision-making, really kind of targeted for golfers that are maybe shooting in the around 80 and looking to break 80 consistently. This episode, we're going to talk about the short game stuff, like chipping, the different types of shots and decision-making that comes around that. And then also putting and avoiding three putts. So I think that, like I said, is beneficial not only for junior golfers, but really for any golfer. And that reminds me of, speaking of putting, last time we played, you had your shiny green yardage book in your back pocket, Straka Line yardage books.
That's right.
I know you stocked up, used the discount code DRIVEN to get 20% on your order. I think, how many different courses did you order?
I think I did a good batch of 3.
Nice.
I had to get that discount, so it's thanks Straka. It came in handy multiple times. I think we used it almost every hole, so it was good. It was great.
Yeah, not only were you lending us your rangefinder because neither Luke or I brought ours, but
yeah, leave it to the experienced looper to have his rangefinder and yardage book handy.
Yeah. So, anyways, use that discount code. We appreciate the partnership with Straka. Honestly, there's really no reason why you would order a yardage book without using a discount code. So you might as well save 20% while you get the chance. And really, for any junior golfer, you need to have a yardage book for a tournament. But even in your day-to-day or just your normal play, your home course, give yourself an advantage. Like, have those green slopes, and I think Straka really does the best job of any of the different options that are out there. So in any case, really excited for this episode. Excited for folks to hear from Kate and learn more about Kate and her background. She's just awesome. Like, she's just somebody who you will, I guarantee, will root for and follow over the course of this summer, just like we've started to do as the Epson Tour kicks off. So with that, here's episode 13 with Kate Smith. Kate Smith, welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. How are you doing?
Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm good. No complaints. All good here. Just waiting to compete again and get some good weather like everybody else.
Well, first of all, I know you recently got married, so I just wanted to congratulate you on that. So how's it going so far?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, if you get in the circles of the Epson Tour and the LPGA, this is wedding season. So I was glad to do it. It was fun. We got all our families together, and it was pretty good. So
I would say, Kate, I've been following you from a distance on social media, and also through your work with Shane Bacon and your partnership with Shane Bacon. I think it's fabulous, and I think you're honestly one of the most interesting people in golf. If folks may not know, I mean, Kate is currently on the Epson Tour, or gearing up for another season of the Epson Tour, development tour for the LPGA. So obviously that's the goal down the road. But you also have this really this side business. You co-own a business with Shane Bacon, Ground Under Repair Designs. I believe you majored in graphic design, and you do a lot of work on golf course logos for clubs, for events, for buddy trips, and you name it, right? And I think it's really cool.
Well, thank you. That's pretty good introduction, and yeah, that's yeah, we do a bit of both, but it's fun. I love each aspect of it. So
One fun fact I think we have to dig into here first and foremost. I went to high school for 4 years. I played golf on the high school golf team for 4 years. You won 5 state high school championships in Minnesota, and that's that doesn't seem possible. So you were playing in high school tournaments, in the high school state tournaments in middle school, and still dominating the competition.
yeah, it's kind of an absurd thing. You'd think it would be a typo, especially here in Texas. They're pretty strict on the high schoolers. But yeah, you could play 6 years of varsity golf in Minnesota. So I started when I was in seventh grade, and we went to state in seventh grade too. I didn't win it, but yeah, that's it's a pretty funny kind of part of my history. I think the best part about it is I tied three of them, so they weren't they weren't landslides, it was kind of a nail
Oh wow!
biter, but it was I had a really great high school career. It was a super fun and kind of a quirky record to have.
So what was your upbringing in the game? Because obviously to be that good at a young age and competing against high schoolers as a 12-year-old, that's something.
Yeah, my dad's a PJ member, so he worked at a private course when I was born, and then he kinda wanted to switch over to the public side, so he bought a golf course when I was, like, 5 months old. And
Oh wow!
it wasn't financially successful. It was a par three course, really cool layout, but just kind of before the golf boom and before par three golf really took off. So the course is not around today, but my brother and I got to grow up on a really sweet layout. And got to practice all the time and mow greens and stuff like that. So I was super lucky in my upbringing, kind of being in a golf family, but we did it kind of a quirky way. We got places, but
Yeah, it's like the family business. Now, is your brother older?
yeah, I have a brother that's 3 years older. He played at Drake in Des Moines, Iowa in college. He was a great player and definitely was a huge aspect of me being here today for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine, just trying to keep up with your older brother and obviously wanting to beat him and the competitiveness that you guys had, that had to have been a huge fuel for you to continue through the game.
Definitely. I think the younger sibling always has a little bit of an advantage athletically too, because you can watch your older sibling make a lot of mistakes and they usually work harder than you do too. So he was always dragging me along, and so I benefited. And being a female, it was hard to find girls that wanted to play 18 holes. So he'd let me play with his friends, and I'd play from the back tees just trying to keep up. And so that experience was pretty much gold for my golf career.
Yeah. So was your dad? You said he was a PJ professional. Was he basically your swing instructor all through your upbringing?
Yeah, still is. I've dabbled in a few other lessons just because I just like learning, and I think it's great learning other like opinions and aspects of the game. But he's been with me since day one. He travels with me quite a bit too now. I kind of pushed him off when I first turned pro because I was like, oh, I don't want my dad hovering all the time. But he knows my swing really well, and knows kind of my tendencies during competition, which is really great to work on.
Yeah, that's really cool. So obviously you were competing against older kids, your older brother, his friends. I mean, what was the scene like to be a seventh and eighth grader, like an eighth grader winning a high school championship? I mean, you're competing against juniors and seniors. But did that never really phase you, or did you kind of you just able to overcome that?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience. Something I probably got used to at a pretty young age. Not to brag, but like the first time I won, I was the youngest person to win a state title in Minnesota, and I won by 9 shots. So It
Oh,
was
wow.
that was like my I think it was the kind of you could say the easiest one. So that kind of made a splash early and everybody was like, "Who's this girl?" So I got some respect early, but luckily I had there was three really great golfers about 3 or 4 years older than me. So I was more worried about chasing them than anybody else in kind of the state. But yeah, you can it's definitely easy to like rest on your laurels. I think the best example of that is I won the first state title when I was 13 and I went and played a bigger tournament I think 2 days later and I shot 92. After I just shot 4 under at state. And I shot 92 and I didn't make a par. So my dad wrote on the scorecard and he said, Kate needs to practice. And he posted it in our pro shop. And it was just kind of our point of like, God, you're really just not as good as you're only as good as your last round, you know. So I never really got too full of myself growing up because somebody who's always better than you. It's kind of junior golf and college golf.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a saying, we just say golf because like golf is just the craziest sport. You know, some things are just inexplicable, you know,
Oh,
you can be
absolutely.
magical one day and disaster the next. That's just
Yes.
golf.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, you said the first one was easy. Was there pressure on the fifth one? Because this is, obviously your senior year, but this is probably uncharted territory, I would imagine, in Minnesota high school lore.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure, especially, I don't know, I think playing golf when you're like 12, 13 is relatively just pretty magical in and of itself. You just don't really know how good you have it. And then you start maturing and, like recruiting comes in and where you're going to go to college and you're growing up and a lot of those pressures kind of mount up. But definitely there was a lot of hype about the record and just all that stuff. So it was a great experience to build on for college and for professional golf, just like having to deal with that type of pressure at a young age and how that feels coming down the stretch. And um, yeah, it was. I mean, the putt I made on the last hole to win like stopped on the edge and fell in. So it was a pretty,
Oh wow,
yeah, formative memory for me at a young age. It was awesome.
that's cool. So, two-part question: is there a Minnesota high school golf Hall of Fame? And if so, like, have you started working on your acceptance speech?
I'm not sure. I know there's a coaches hall of fame because I think, some coaches I watched be inducted. I don't know. Haven't started writing a speech yet. So
Yeah, I think you're a
it would
shoe in.
be
You're
it would
pro.
be an honor either way. I bet it's a little easier to get into than the LPGA Hall of Fame, which
Yeah,
would
that's really
be
tough.
the ultimate goal.
Yeah, but if there is a point system, I'm sure you qualified for that
I
one.
hope so.
So one other thing related to golf in Minnesota. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
I'm from Chicago originally. I think the Midwest, but Minnesota, the seasons are even shorter than in Illinois. Like, were you practicing golf during the off season? Were you doing other activities, other sports? Like any sort of advice for someone, a junior golfer who might be in a similar boat?
Yeah, I played basketball during middle school for quite a few years and then mostly focused on extracurriculars like I was in the honor society and did student council. I kind of liked being involved in, doing art classes, things like that. I liked spending the winter thinking of other things. Yeah, we hung up the clubs for like 3 months at least, just didn't touch them, which is kind of crazy to look back at. But I think something like definitely I took from that period of time and still do is like if you're thinking about golf and like visualizing golf, watching golf, like that's really beneficial more than people give it credit. It's not always banging balls on the range or hitting putts. It's just like visualizing the sport and like really having intentional kind of self realization about some aspects of the game can help. And you don't know when those are going to come. A lot of times it comes in off season.
Now you mentioned these other high school or these other amateur events or junior events outside of the high school events. I know Minnesota is a golf crazy state, but what's the junior scene like in Minnesota? And then were you also, as you kind of got through high school, like branching out to regional, national events? I know you did qualify for a U.S. Girls Junior as well, right?
Yeah, so we have a pretty competitive state. Mostly, there's a couple levels, kind of like how Texas has is like, this level of competition, then like the highest level of competition was called the Players Tour that we grew up playing. There's also a team competition for the course you were members at as a kid, so
Oh,
that
wow.
was
Cool.
that was kind of a cool thing. Played in women's am was, state am, state match play, state open. I think we played some of those regional events at Hazeltine, Interlochen. We played a match play event at Whistling Straits. So I got to play some
Oh, cool.
really great golf courses growing up. So I was really lucky. And then as far as like where our family was at with the golf course, it was kind of like try as hard as you can to qualify for one national event a year, and that was what we could kind of manage as a family. So Optimist or North South or USAM is like, let's hit one, like hopefully it's like striking gold a little bit when you're a kid.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was lucky to finally make it to a USGA event or US junior girls when I was a senior in high school. So it was a little too late for recruiting, but for life experience it was awesome. We didn't
Yeah.
have AJGA up close, and I wasn't in the position to travel, so I really just had to try to make a splash with the regional events and hope that that was like good enough for college coaches to
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue. I mean, you played at University of Nebraska. Like, how was that recruiting process? Obviously, you had this high school resume, which was really unprecedented. But in terms of schools, like getting noticed, and just like that sort of stage of your career, like what was your takeaway from that experience?
Yeah, it was overall it was a good experience. I ninth grade. I don't know how it's changed now, but ninth grade I just sent a bunch of emails to like my top 15 schools, and frankly, probably 75% of them said we already have our class for that year
Oh,
and good luck. So you just learn to hear no a little bit. And then, there's some coaches that really make you feel special and make you feel like you're a part of the team. That's also their job is to make their school seem really great, like luckily I got what I was sold at Nebraska. Like I loved my experience there. My coaches were great. So I definitely try to talk to girls or guys that are already on that team playing. I would look at their rankings. Are they improving as a team? How are they getting to nationals? Is that something they get to every year? I learned that was kind of my one probably regret at Nebraska was that Big Ten was a really strong conference at the time, and it took us pretty much my whole 5 years there to get more competitive in that conference. It was just hard for us to get out of our conference. Whereas, you go to a smaller conference and, see regionals every year. So it's what's important to you. And I got everything I wanted out of the experience. I wanted to be able to drive home. I was 8 hours away from home. I wanted academics to be important. I wanted to major in what I wanted to major in, and I didn't really want to have to fight for my spot. I wanted to play all 4 years, and um, I definitely wanted competition, but I definitely did not want to sit on the sidelines for 3 years. So those were kind of key things that I needed in my college experience.
I think that's really great feedback, because I think those some of the things you listed are probably maybe things that folks maybe take for granted, or they're maybe secondary concerns, but are maybe things that they should consider more heavily when selecting schools. You don't want to be caught off guard, show up on campus and it's not exactly what you expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary process. I also think that like a lot of people transfer. Sometimes you don't get it right the first time, and it's okay. And I mean, it's a very chaotic time in your life, so you're gonna change, but ultimately, I think like the player and the golfer you are like makes the place like. Yes, facilities are great, but I mean, you can work hard anywhere, and make it great. Especially, God, I mean, the courses these kids are playing for competitions are so good. I mean, it doesn't even matter D2, D1, and the experiences out there are awesome. So I think you can't really go wrong sometimes.
So I want to talk a little bit about just golf development. So think about the Kate Smith who showed up day one on campus versus the person who graduated as a Big Ten, as a Big Ten champion. Talk about that progression in terms of elements you added to your game, like what areas you improved on. Could you see like tangible things like, oh, freshman year I worked on this, and then sophomore year I added this? Like, was it staggered like that, or was it just kind of a slow migration towards improvement?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see it now. I think when I was in it, I couldn't really see it. I think early in college, I need to work on my emotions on the course. So, kind of the tempo around, and you know, could I manage bogeys, manage big numbers, positively think about myself and my golf game. A lot of just like growing up and kind of human skills. And then once I could kind of get my feet under me and be a little bit more confident as a golfer, I got to work on things that were a little bit more fine tuning, wedges and chipping and things I always worked on, but really like study them and kind of look into the craft of those things and be able to give a little bit more concentrated time on those. We're kind of towards the end of college. Um, I remember one coach was like, if you don't have a double for the whole golf tournament, we'll buy you a pair of shoes. And I was like, oh, I'm getting those pair of shoes. So that was a big motivator. So sometimes it's not so complicated. It's just like, don't make a double. And it really helps your score out. So yeah, I can
Yeah.
definitely see the tangible kind of steps looking back. But golf stuff, when you're in it, you feel like you're just working on everything and you're not good enough at anything. So it's nice to look back and see that like those things mattered and helped.
Yeah. Can you talk about the Big Ten tournament? I believe you won in 2021. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it was surreal. I mean, I'd say I was a decent college golfer, always kind of ranked 180 to 220. I mean, good enough, but nothing spectacular. And we worked really hard. It was my fifth year in COVID, and we had a starting five that traveled pretty much the whole year. And we worked really hard as a group and really believed in ourselves as a team. So I think I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 back going into the last day, and things just started rolling. And I definitely didn't think about winning until kind of halfway through. And I just got this feeling of like, I don't know who else could be playing better than me right now. So, the cup felt like a barrel. It felt like everything was going in. So I ended up shooting, I think 63 or 64 that last day to
Oh my
win.
goodness.
And yeah, it was pretty surreal. Definitely, nothing I'd really done in my college career, especially on a last day at a conference championship. And our team got second, which was, I mean, when I joined the team, we were pretty much like, okay, are we going to get second to last or third to last this year? So we were pushing so hard as a team just to make, Nebraska kind of proud and make it a golf program. And so I was so glad I could help that. And obviously was an awesome memory for me now.
Yeah, I know that Nebraska athletics. So I went to University of Illinois. I always get nervous when we go to Nebraska to play in any sport because like volleyball or like men's basketball, and they bring
You
the
got us
support. They
last
really
night.
support their athletics.
That
Yeah,
was
barely,
tough.
barely.
Playoff or overtime. That was
Yeah,
heartbreaking. But yeah,
that
no,
was.
that's Illinois and Nebraska and Michigan State. I mean, there's just a lot of good athletic programs. So I understand. It's always good competition.
So you mentioned one of the draws of University of Nebraska is you got to pick your major. Like they didn't influence that decision. It sounded like from what you mentioned earlier, you always had an interest in art and drawing. Can you talk a little bit about graphic design? Because I believe on social media while you were in college, you were posting these logos, and that was sort of the genesis of all of this, right?
Yeah, yeah, I had interest in art. My mom was a art major in college, and definitely wanted to do that in in college in some way. Graphic design seemed like a more realistic path than just an art major, so that's why I went that route. And then yeah, we were trying to get ready for NIL and try to like stand out as athletes, which I wasn't a part of the NIL, but they were kind of encouraging us to do things on social media that were out of the box. And I mean, every golfer we go to places and we say, "Oh, this logo's terrible," and so I felt like, okay, I could do something with that, because I go to a lot of courses and think, yeah, this logo's pretty bad. So I would redesign every logo I competed at, which was fun sometimes. Sometimes they were great logos, so it was hard to redo them every time. But yeah, I caught some traction and people liked seeing them. And I'd be like 11 o'clock before the tournament the night before, being like, I don't have any ideas for this one, but it was pretty fun.
So you were doing this like within the window of being at the tournament, you were doing the logo, trying to get that logo out.
Yeah, I told myself that it was like a post-practice round, like I had to get the inspiration. It was probably just procrastination, but yeah, it was right before the tournament. I would work on it.
Were you showing like potential ideas to your teammates or bouncing idea, or were you getting ideas off of them in some cases?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my teammate Megan kind of gave me I was always bouncing ideas off of her or sending them to Amy, who works for our company now. I was like, is this any good? Do you think I should tweet it out now? And be like, oh, I gotta get to bed, so I hope it's good, So definitely good to have a good focus group as a designer. I've been very lucky to have that.
Well, it must have worked because somehow I think through social media you drew the attention of Shane Bacon, the golf course broadcaster, and I don't know what. I mean, he's just everything. Media magnate. He's everywhere all at once. It seems like in the game of golf. But yeah, you guys have partnered up and formed a formal business. Could you talk a little bit about that process of, I don't know who reached out to whom, or and just how this turned into just an idea, just into a business, an actual business.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy looking back at it. Shane, we interacted a couple times because I was just a huge fan of his podcast. And then he liked my logos, and I also played well at a couple televised events. I think we kind of kept in touch a little bit. And then he's like, oh, always wanted to start a design company. And I said, okay, well, I'm in. And he said, let's do it. We started it, and then I don't think I met him in person till like 9 months later. And he had a couple client, I mean, really just one client, and I had a couple clients here. I mean, really, it could have fizzled. There could have been a few months in, we just said, it doesn't really work, but we just kept getting people that were interested, and I kept posting silly stuff on Instagram that really resonated with people, and I think, and he would text me an idea of like, "Hey, Cam Smith just won this, you know, out in Hawaii. Let's do a drawing of him," or I'd have an idea, and so it became a really awesome relationship of just like bouncing ideas off of each other and seeing what stuck. And yeah, it's been awesome. He's the best, and definitely a cool partnership, and it's fun to create a company that is like putting stuff into the golf world that we love.
Yeah, that's really neat. So, Kate, can you describe just like maybe the nature of the business in terms of like the target demo, the target products, and areas that maybe you're venturing out to or hope to venture out to in the future?
Yeah, so it's a boutique graphic design company. So any sort of graphics or logos or brandings for people related to the golf industry. Um, we kind of take anybody, there's personal trainers that work with golfers or golf courses that are looking for a redesign, member guest logo, buddies trip logo, kind of anything and above. We worked with a few golf brands doing, I mean, new golf ball logo designs. And we're really starting to get into golf courses a little bit more now that we have a little bit more experience in the industry. And I think more trusted kind of name has helped sell that part of the industry, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, that's really neat. And honestly, from an onlooker from the outside, it just seems like this is a really a perfect marriage of synergy. I think between like Shane seems, I think he probably thinks about golf 24/7, but he's also thinking about like the different angles and ideas for, content that maybe isn't covered, captured fully, or just like a twist on a potential idea. Like, how often are you guys in contact in terms of bouncing ideas off each other?
Yeah, I'd say pretty constantly. It might not always be like phone calls, but a lot of texting of designs or like, I think we have a few aha moments where it'll be like, oh, for this client, we got to do this. Or I'll be in the weeds of the design work and I'll screenshot something and be like, I think we got it. So it's pretty fun. It's not all sunshine and roses, but those moments are awesome when you kind of feel like you've hit it. And like you said, he's so good at thinking about the golf game in like a different way that's not kind of overdone, which a lot of people kind of go that route.
Yeah. And in terms of, you mentioned golf course logos, like, what do you think makes a good golf course? Like, what are you looking for when you're designing something as sort of the litmus test? And then if you see something in the pro shop or, golf course, like what are some of the logos that you most admire?
Yeah, I mean, I like MacArthur is a great logo. Marion, um, I love Olympic. There's great, so many great logos out there. Tree Farm's great in his branding that he's done. Um, I think golf, you have to really like honor the heritage and like honor, like your background in architecture. Like you have to honor, why is this golf course here? Why is it special to people? Which is really hard to capture in a logo. And then our thing is like it has to be embroidered well and it has to work like small on a white hat. I mean, I mock up everything on a white hat because that's just kind of
Yeah.
quintessential. But it's got to have that kind of why behind it. And hopefully, when people look at it, they know like, oh, that's my golf course. Or like, I remember playing there 2 years ago. So
Actually, I'm wearing the old Barnwell logo on my shirt.
it's a
So
good
I don't know
one.
if you're familiar with the hot debate in golf right now is Old Barnwell versus Tree Farm from a golf course perspective. What do you think in terms of golf logo perspective? I think they're both strong, but I don't know if you had a strong opinion either way.
I think they're both strong too. I mean, that one is a nice one where it kind of marries the like character and the classic aspect, whereas Tree Farm has their very classic logo and their character logo that live
Yeah.
separately. So I think they're doing it in kind of two different ways, which is great.
Yeah. I think the Tree Monster might be my favorite logo in golf.
Yeah, I mean, McWhorter did awesome on that one. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Because you mentioned being at the golf tournaments and needing to come up with golf course logos. I have some creative ventures as well, and we'll get into that in a minute. But oftentimes, like you might get inspiration just in the middle of nowhere. And I think a lot of times, like I become sort of obsessed with a thought process once I have it, that it's hard to concentrate on maybe what I'm supposed to be doing. So do you ever find that in a golf tournament? It's like, oh wait, I really need to focus on this long par three or whatever when you're thinking about chasing this design idea that you maybe just struck you.
Yeah, I mean, focus is kind of a funny word because like even my parents would always get on me of like, "Hey, Kate, you need to focus," and I tell them like, "Stop telling me I need to like I hate that word," because I really think that like I operate well like that flow state that we all want to get into. Like sometimes my flow state is when I'm like thinking of something else. So like I might play really well when I'm thinking of a logo,
Wow.
or I might design something well when I'm like really on the range and need to be practicing. I think it's like it really triggers kind of that other side of our brain, which is great. And I've never really had much of a like strict creative process, so it kind of works that a lot of times I'm like sketching on pro-ams practice rounds. I do a lot of sketching because my patience is shorter than I'd like it to be. So waiting on the group in front, I'm like, okay, what clients do we have right now? What could I, look at? So I kind of use, I play both of them kind of off each other and try to keep finding inspiration.
Do you think there's like the creativity on the golf course? Like, are you channeling kind of that part of your brain in golf, or is that just more kind of strictly kind of regimented?
I'd say I channel it a lot. Like people that know me well, I usually play pretty creative golf. I like working the ball different ways, and I love playing in the wind. Like anything where I can visualize a shot in a different way is great. So I definitely use both sides. I really work hard to get the mechanical fundamental part down, because to me it's not doesn't come as natural, doing things like a certain way. So I definitely love using creativity on the golf course, and it's fun watching other players do it as well.
Yeah. And I know GUR is relatively in its infancy. Has there been any like sort of just like pinch me moments? Like I can't believe that I'm having this meeting or we're like presenting this idea to these people.
Yeah, there's been a lot of them, and I've been so lucky that Shane's kind of trusted me on some projects or phone calls. Um, yeah, I kind of get on and like, okay, like this is it. I think a big one this year was Glenn and I, our designer, and my new husband. We worked on a project for Titleist, the RCT ball, and they finalized a concept. And we're like, great, like they got their new logo. And then you don't really know what a client's going to do after with it. You don't know how they're going to launch it, how they're going to, sometimes we help them with that. And then I think it was the tour championship of the PGA Tour, and they had the RCT balls on the range with the technology and our new logo on every single ball on Golf Channel. So that was like crazy. They were like, how many golf balls are on that range right now that have a logo that we designed? So that was like an awesome moment. And it's not always about the big, like, oh, big names. Sometimes people, what a logo means to people is just enough for us. But that was a pretty cool moment to have it on such a big stage.
So the RCT with the orange kind of circles, that's you guys did that, or is it a new
Yeah,
logo?
there's two. They had an original design, and then we redesigned the logo. I don't know where they're at in unleashing that ball, or what. I don't want to claim the logo and it not be ours, but we have seen them use our version of the logo quite a few
Oh
times. And
wow.
I mean, that technology
Yeah.
is crazy what they're doing with that
Yeah,
golf
yeah.
ball. So
Yeah,
yeah.
we have some RCTs upstairs. That it's amazing because that was something that was really lacking, I think, in especially the boom of like indoor simulator golf. It's just like you had to put stickers on the ball to get the accurate spin, but now it's just like you don't even have to think about it. It's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that
Uh,
whole industry. And we've done a few logos for simulator golfers. And it's like, how do we make that industry kind of more organic and interesting, and not like, okay, we're all just going into a closet to hit golf balls. It's a whole different sector of golf now.
Hey, one other thing I wanted to touch base on related to your amateur career, because I think this might have been one of the first few times that I had come across some of your stuff in social media. I remember a logo design for Anna Davis when she won the ANWA, if I
Mhm.
recall correctly. And I know you played in the ANWA, was it 2021? So this must have been right around the time the Big Ten
Mhm.
championship happened, right? Yeah.
Yes.
How was that experience?
Amazing. I mean, it was like a huge goal of mine, and like to have it realized, and then you build something up like that, and to have it exceed your expectations like a million times over. I mean, it was an incredible experience, and I tell people all the time, like, you don't know where golf's going to take you, and like I still am like pinching myself that I got to experience that.
Yeah, and that it seems to be getting better and better every year. So what was your takeaway playing Augusta?
Um yeah, definitely like harder in a different way than I felt like I watched on TV. I know like people just beat around the like, oh, it's hillier than you think it is, which it is. But as far as like playing it, I mean, like number nine, it's like the ball is severely below my feet, and I've got a 5 iron, and I really need to draw it into that green. but I need to carry a bunker. I mean, just like how hard those shots are, because like for a golfer, it just goes against everything that's naturally, like they just kind of disarm you on every hole, and you have to hit the right shot off of a really hard lie for that, how it's designed. So it's a beautiful, like really hard golf course, but um gosh, it's awesome. I mean, just it really is a masterpiece how they worked it and keep it in the condition it is. I mean, it's a magical place. It's like Disney World.
I would say the one thing that's great about the members at Augusta National is they really lead from the front, right? So they've really kind of championed this event, which has turned into one of the biggest amateur events for women in the world, frankly. And it seems to get getting better and better each year. And I think there has been sort of a seismic shift in terms of the focus on women's the amateur game, college golf. I mean, obviously Anna Davis is going to be starting school early, I think, but just like more like household names, it seems like, in terms of amateur golfers and women's amateur golfers. And then even this past year, I think they announced they were going to be investing and pouring money into like the local Muni course and like renovating that. And then, you're seeing other clubs and other events start to do the same thing. And I think even the stuff with the app, their app is always the best, and like everyone else is following suit. But they seem to just clicking on all cylinders, and it's awesome that they saw this gap that existed, and maybe that they could be playing a role in growing the game for women. And it's been awesome. I mean, it's awesome that you were a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. It's I think they knew that all the eyes were on them, and they had to make the right moves, and they are. The other events they're doing, like the Asian Pacific Amateur, and they're really putting their money where their mouth is. And I think the big thing of like growing any sport is seeing younger talent, and we could see that on the men's side, but now having that on the women's side at the annual, like you're really seeing fans follow these names after like, oh, is she going to turn pro? Is she going to go to Stanford? Is she going to go to USC? You see people taking an interest from an earlier age in these kids, which helps just bolster the game on our end, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I believe you slept on the lead at the ANWA when you were there.
Yes. It was my quickest rise and fall of my golf career,
No.
but it was awesome. I mean, the short synopsis is, I played 12 holes. My brother is caddy for me. I was like, Carter, I'm not going to look at the leaderboard. We still have, holes to play. And we go home, I look at the leaderboard and I'm like, no way. Like, I'm leading by 3. And I felt like I was the last invite in that tournament. I was like, what am I doing? I get up the next morning. I'm terrified. I've got a million notifications on my phone. I play poorly coming in. I lose a playoff. I mean, it was awesome, though. I mean, just to experience all those emotions at that event, like, it was great anyway, even if I didn't, perform the way I wanted to at the end.
We just talked to Tony Pancake, who is the director of golf at Crooked Stick in Indianapolis. And his daughter is Annabelle Pancake, who is a senior at Clemson. And last summer, she made it to the finals of the Western Women's Amateur, I believe. And last summer, she made it to the finals of the Women's British Amateur. And actually, earlier today on social media, she was opening her invite to the 2024 ANWA. And Tony had mentioned it, that it was coming, that it just gotten it. So obviously he's super excited, super proud of her. And what an awesome moment for these elite junior golf or elite collegiate golfers.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I've played with Annabelle a couple times in college. She's a great player. So I follow her as well. I saw the same post. I was like, gives you chills.
Yeah. And I imagine she'll be, you might see her later this summer on the Epson Tour.
Yeah.
After
No,
she's
it's
done with school.
a lot of great players coming out every year.
One last thing before we get into the professional side. So we mentioned your ground under repair design. I was wondering if you're hiring, because I actually have dabbled in golf course logos, and I wanted to actually get your take on a few of them, if you don't mind. So
all right, sounds good. I mean, if there's talent there, I'll run it by
I got a
Shane.
few. Yeah, I'll run it by Shane. So I think you have them in front of you. I'm just going to show them on my phone for now. So I'm a member at Ballyneel Golf Club in Colorado. So that's the logo just for reference. I mentioned I dabble in golf course architecture, sort of an architecture nerd. But one of the things I like to do just as a hobby is I like to route golf courses. So any sort of topo that I can get my hands on, like I'll try to map out a course and see if it holds up well, right? So Ballyneel a few years ago was looking at land adjacent to the club and thinking about building a second course. So I was able to get the topo of that, and I mapped out a course, and it was north of the existing course, so I was calling it Bally North. So, anyways, using the same B from Ballyneel, I designed this logo for Bally North. What do you think? 1 to 10.
Yeah, it's I would say 7.
Okay, 7. But that would be definitely embroiderable, I think. So that would pass
Yes,
that
yeah,
test
it
at
works in
least.
one color. Be good on different applications.
I know that you designed the logos for Shane's podcasts, which he has many. He has 2, right?
Yes.
So anyways, I haven't spent a lot of time on this, but the Driven Golf podcast logo probably needs a little bit of work, but I think at least the name sticks out, right?
Yes, it's legible. That is good. It could use a little flair, probably.
Okay, a little bit of flair. So, but we
No,
have a segment with my son's instructor, Andrew Lewis, and the segment's called Angle of Attack with Andrew Lewis. So that's
I like that one. You got
that's that logo.
yeah, little graphic in the background.
That comes from the TrackMan, basically the Angle of Attack thing.
Yeah,
And I've got one other logo. I have it here. So at Ballyneel, they have a par 3 course called the Mulligan course. And actually, this one is actually commercially viable because they sell it in the pro shop. I actually designed the alternate logo for the par 3 course, the Mulligan course.
sweet.
It's named after a gentleman, Charlie Mulligan. That's his real name. He was the first caddy at Ballyneel when they first opened in 2006, and he has since passed away. But they named the par 3 course after him. So
I think that one's my favorite. That's a good one.
All right. So,
yeah, got some good contrast in it. That's definitely at least an 8.
Oh,
Think
awesome.
that one's good. I
But you're
don't give
probably looking for 9s and 10s, right?
I don't give myself 9s and 10s, so I'm a harsh critic. But that one's great.
Well,
There's a cool story behind it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like you said, the logos, like the story, the linkage between the logo and the history of the course or some story, I think that goes a long ways.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's migrate into your professional golf life. So I think for the last 2 seasons, you were on the Epson Tour and are gearing up for season 3 of the Epson Tour. I think I wanted to ask, like similar to what we talked about in terms of your college development. Just think about the Kate Smith who first stepped foot on the Epson Tour in that first season, lessons learned, stumbling blocks, ups and downs, and then kind of what you carried into season 2. And I definitely noticed improvement there as well. And then talk about like what your focus has been this off season heading into this upcoming season.
Yeah, definitely. Luckily, a lot of changes between, who I was going into professional golf and now and during the middle of last season. I'd say just in professional golf, you have a lot more in competition. I mean, just as far as like days you're competing. So like my health has gotten a lot better. I think my physicality. I mean, college golf, we competed 10 times throughout 9 months, and we're competing about 20 times in 8 months with longer tournaments. So it really is like a boot camp for becoming a better golfer. Dealing with a cut line, I think that was a huge, learning curve of knowing you could go home early. So a lot of those things fundamentally, working on. Luckily, I think one of my better aspects of my game is fairways and regulation, keeping the ball in play. I had to work on my chipping a lot again and wedges. I mean, I grew up thinking I was a great wedge player and a good chipper, but you just have to get better and keep getting better and keep getting better. So nice to see some improvements. And then this off season, I was just really focused on my putting. I think generally I have a pretty good sense of, reading greens. I have pretty good speed, but under pressure, I wanted to be fundamentally a little bit more sound. So really working on that right now.
So I imagine the goal, what is it, that is it top 10 or top 20 on the money list get their LPGA card at the end of the year? Is that right?
Yeah, it's top 10. They just added 5 more cards for next year, so it'll be top 15 next year, so it's a
Oh,
big
wow.
change.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And I'm sorry, where were you last year? Was it like 19th?
19th. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So you must be super stoked for this upcoming year. Obviously, you're spending time in the off season and down in Galveston working on and honing your game. You start up in March, is that right?
Yeah, yep, start up in March, and yeah, it's been a good off season. I went to Q Series in December, which is, yeah, for us Epson girls, we kinda have 2 shots at our LPGA card, either getting the top 10 or making it to Q Series, where they also give out, about 20 cards. So nice to have those experiences and just know every year that there's just a really good chance to get out on the LPGA. So I'm excited to, you know, do it again. And I think I'm in a better spot than I have been. So I'm excited.
So for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with the Epson Tour, can you talk about just like the format in terms of the season, how it's staged, like generally where the events are, and where, if people wanted to follow like your progress, like where would they go?
Yeah. It's about 18 to 22 events a year. We usually do it in swings. So like we're in Florida the first swing, and then Arizona, California. We'll do a Midwest stretch, kind of a southern stretch in Alabama and Arkansas. Each tournament's weighted pretty much similarly. They're changing it to a point system this year, so it'll be weighted very similarly. Last year we kind of had like almost 4 or 5 kind of major events where the purses were significantly higher, so you kind of had some pressure on to compete in those events. So traditionally, it's been straight off of money list. Top 10 gets their card, and it's kind of one of the best cards you can get on the LPGA. You get really good, full status. You don't get reshuffled. So yeah, it's great. There's been a lot of great players that go through the Epson Tour. I think Nelly Corda was on the Epson Tour. There's been a lot of women that we kind of get our feet wet on this tour and then make it to the LPGA. So it's kind of the system. And then based on your play, this year 11 through 35 on the money list went straight to Q Series, where you get the chance to get another card. So it's a great tour, and Epson's been a new sponsor, and they've pumped a lot of money, a lot of support into it. We've had a little bit more television coverage and a lot of great sponsors. So it's been a good time to be on this tour.
And can you talk about just like professional golf life on the development tour? I imagine you're watching the budget very closely. And I think it's important for folks to understand, like I had Ryan French on in episode 9, and he highlights these stories of these folks chasing the dream. I think everybody resonates with these stories, and people, you have a dream of playing on the LPGA tour. It's right. You could see it, like we're at the lights at the end of the tunnel. Are there ways that folks can support you and just support other Epson Tour golfers? Maybe they're coming to their town and host family or whatever, ways that you can, save cost and maybe caddy even as well. Like, are there opportunities like that exist?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely just following us on our leaderboard, watching the LPGA when it's on, like any type of following is great. We pay for everything ourselves. So like Epson, doesn't pay for anything. We pay for entry fees, we pay for our housing, airlines. We're usually on the road about 3 to 4 weeks at a time. So yeah, I mean, you can imagine how much a hotel costs for a week, or, flights. It can get pretty expensive. And so we have to find our own sponsors, or, hope that we're making enough money as we go to afford it. We're in host families most of the time to save costs. So definitely, if you can host a player if they're nearby, that's great. Volunteering to caddy is awesome. We have a lot of volunteer member caddies along the way at courses that, make a difference. Caddies can be, you know, 1,000, 2,000, whatever a week. It's just not something that most of us can afford. And then, sponsorships are awesome, but it's hard to give away that type of money to people. But if you're in position, if you have a small business or a company that you're involved with, you know, allowing us to wear your company on their shirt is like the top tier of supporting us. So anything helps, and just
Yeah.
just supporting women's golf in general, I think, is awesome.
Now, were you speaking of that? Have you had like supporters and backers that have helped you launch into this career, or are you using like the GUR kind of income to keep the playing career, or is it some balance of both?
Yeah, definitely a balance of both. I've had some really supportive people from the Midwest that have helped me start Bell Bank in Fargo Moorhead and KLN Brands in Minnesota. They've been big in just backing me for a few years while I get my feet under me. GUR's kind of been able to, like, I don't know, just give me more of a life. A lot of these girls out here, we just don't end up with savings or any sort of, I mean, the penny pinching is just tough. So GR has been able to be like, okay, I can go buy myself lunch today. And, it's not like, I take it very serious when somebody sponsors me, that like their money is going towards me playing on the LPGA, and that,
Yeah.
everything that I make is going back into golf. And it's kind of the way I do it, because that's I just know they believe in me, and I want to do my due diligence with the sponsorship. So GR has been kind of nice to have on the side, because it's hard. I've known a lot of girls that end up trying for 6, 7 years, and they end up, with no experience in the workforce, no savings, and I mean, a lot of good memories, but I mean, a lot of men on that side too. They just end up, it's tough when you say goodbye to the sport. It's hard to start from there too.
Yeah. It's tough to know when that time is too, especially when you're so close.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just never know when you'll get your big break.
As your then fiance, now husband, is he have any caddy experience for you at tournaments?
Yes, he's had some good experiences, some not as good. We joke about it a lot, but this past year was pretty comical. He proposed to me before an event, and I was like, as a golfer, I'm like, I don't want to play bad now, because then, and sure enough, I shot like couple over the first day, and it was a rain delay, so I played a few holes in my second round, and then came out and played the last 12 holes of my second round. And I actually shot the lowest round I've shot on the Epson Tour. So I think he was like, whew, coast is clear. Like the engagement wasn't bad luck, So he's a good caddy, but not full time yet. I think we're gonna keep it separate for a little bit.
Is that what led you down to Galveston, or was there some opportunity there to just play and practice there?
Yeah, yeah, I followed him to Galveston, and I definitely need to move to Texas, Arizona, or Florida. And I was kind of looking at Texas anyway, just because it would be closer to family in Iowa. And yeah, it's been great. The Texas golf scene has been very welcoming, and Galveston's a funky little town, and we enjoy it. I played a public course down here that's been really great to me.
Are you able to find like a game like people that could push you to been pushing you to get better?
Yeah, that's definitely kind of a tough part. I play with a lot of regular guys around here that probably sometimes get tired of me. Sometimes it's nice when they're higher handicaps. I'm like, okay, I've got to birdie this hole, because they're gonna, bogey it and get the skin. So I do my best to keep the competition. Luckily, I have a few friends in Dallas and Austin, so if I'm feeling like I need more reps, I just go try to find my other Epson Tour friends and play a few rounds and shake the dust off a little bit.
Yeah, well, if you're ever up in this area, the Dallas area, want to play with a 16-year-old and a couple chops, you're more than welcome. The course we play at, Old American, actually host an LPGA event or they have the last few years.
I love
I
that
don't,
course.
I don't know.
Great course.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Although the women make it look really super easy. Yeah, it's just really amazing. So yeah, you have an opportunity up here for sure if you're ever up in this area.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, Ryan French mentioned this. He's trying to put together opportunity for parent child to caddy at a mini tour event, and I think that's going to be happening in August. And it might actually be an Epson tour. So I don't know exactly where the Epson tour might be in August, but I told him I'd be the first one to sign up. Maybe hopefully the timing works out.
That's awesome. No, I love that. I think that stuff's great. I mean, I think Corn Ferry and Epson, like we are, I would hope we're a little bit more down to earth, and it'd be cool to do some more creative kind of activations like that because it just gets more people interested and gets more
Hmm.
eyeballs and especially more
We,
families. That's awesome.
I think, it's related to what we just talked about a few minutes ago, but I think people want to feel like they're part of someone's helping someone chase their dream, right? And someone chase this journey, especially within the game. I think the game of golf is just brings out, I think, the best in people in a lot of ways. Yeah, I would just encourage folks to just do some research, and if you see the Epson tours coming to your town, or you could reach out to you on Instagram or whatever, just think about how can I support you and your effort to chase that dream, because I have to believe we're going to be seeing you on television, a year from now, a little over a year from now, just sort of the growth and trajectory that you've had within the game. And it'd be great to say like, hey, I had Kate on my podcast, or like I caddy for Kate at an Epson tour event, and now look at her. Like, it's awesome to see people really, really good people chase their dreams within this game of golf, and just the opportunities that the game provides.
I appreciate it. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, at any level, it's just great what it provides for all of us. And I have one host family that's hosted me for now 3 years, and her son was in, minor league baseball. And she's like, my son had host family, so I'm going to host you until, you're not coming by anymore. So I mean, people get it, and the ones that do, we really appreciate it because it just, it really takes like it has taken a village for me to get better and to keep me out here. There's a lot of people supporting me and helping me, and so for every girl and guy doing it, it takes a lot. So but it's fun to be part of, like you said, part of the village and part of the people that are really boosting these golfers up to be where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kate, I really appreciate your time. It's been awesome talking to you, hearing about your background and your experience. Joseph and I will definitely be following your progress this year on the Epson tour, and, just hoping for those wins to come and just breezing through that top 15. And we'll be seeing you in future years on the LPGA, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. No, this was a fun chat. Thanks for having me. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'll come up to Dallas here soon.
Yeah. And if your golf logo design is becomes so busy that your second, third, and fourth choice aren't available, and you need that fifth choice, feel free to reach out.
All right. I got your number. I'll give you a call.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Andrew Lewis, welcome back to the Angle of Attack.
Hey, yeah, good to be here. As always.
So last time we talked about this, envisioning sort of this 80-ish kind of tournament shooter and the lowest hanging fruit to try to get that next step of breaking 80 consistently. And we spent most of our time focused on more of the mental side, the decision making, some of those pitfalls in terms of avoiding big numbers. You had listed a couple items early on in that episode around, they're more related to short game, chipping, flaws in like poor decisions around chipping leading to multiple strokes and big numbers, turning a good situation into a bad situation around the green. And then obviously multiple three putts in a round can easily be a round killer. I talked about like tracking stats and what we call tiger strokes, and some of these hopefully avoidable things, the easiest things to focus on that Tiger sort of viewed as non-negotiables through his pro career and growing up. And two of those that we've been tracking are what we call two chips. Did you chip twice on a particular hole? Almost effectively a penalty stroke if you think of it that way. And then three putts are generally basically just adding a stroke to your score and trying to avoid those as much as possible. And those in this range tend to happen probably more than once a round, I think. If you think of three putts on the PGA Tour, I think it's 2.9%, which would be like 1 per 72 hole tournament, or excuse me, 2 per 70 hole tournament, almost exactly. But I think in the sort of this range, it's one or more times around. Yeah. So
yeah, more probably.
Yeah. So anyways, what's been your observation around, let's start with the chipping side and then we can get into the putting side.
Well, I would start with, so when you have a player that struggles to break 80, we talked about this a little bit last time, but they generally are blaming their ball striking for why they struggle so much. And so I would say they spend an excessive amount of time on the range, and then the leftover time is like doing a little bit of chipping and a little bit of putting, which really isn't ever solving these problems. I don't know if you have seen that with any of the kids that you've been around. I just don't see these two skills prioritize enough with this type of player. And it's almost like if they would flip it, like stop hitting so many balls, stop trying to solve the ball striking so much, and just spend more time here, you probably would see this stuff go away, even if you weren't even really working on it like that effectively. Have you seen that with other kids? Like Luke is not that at all. I don't ever see Luke hit balls. All he does is chip and putt. I could count a handful of times he's hit balls on the range when he's been around me.
I will say, and we'll get into this as we get into the further ranges. I think short game is probably the single biggest differentiating factor between very good and hyper elite golfers. Like you said, it's something that's instilled early on, and it only becomes an increasing separator over time. I think I talked about the mental side a little bit last time. I honestly see this manifesting itself in chipping mistakes. You mentioned the hero shot. I think the hero shot can come up in short game, right? If you're feeling like the pressure of, oh, I'm playing this par 5, I need to get up and down. Otherwise, I'm going to feel horrible for bogeying this par 5 and missing out on this opportunity. It could be you're in a spot that you should have never been in the first place, right? You missed in the wrong area. You mentioned that last time. And now you're having to hit this like near impossible hero shot because you're desperate to try to get up and down. When sometimes getting to 8 or 10 feet may be a very good outcome, depending if you're short-sighted or depending on what kind of shot you have. Sometimes you just have to take your medicine. And sometimes a bogey isn't really a bad result. So I think that a lot of what I see in two chips come in two areas. One is sort of this decision error, right? Which is like what I decided to try to execute was so risky and had such low likelihood of being successful that it was, roll of the dice and 9 times out of 10, it wasn't going to turn out to be a good outcome. Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I see is what I would say like a commitment issue. And I make this mistake all the time, honestly. If I'm unsure about a chip, or maybe I'm in between two different ones because I'm not sure if the one I decided one is exactly the right one, that is what I think leads to kind of duff shots, like flubbing a shot and leaving it short or like sculling it across the green. I honestly think it's like that lack of 100% commitment. You would have been much better off, even if it was not the right play, but being committed to that play versus kind of trying to live between two different sides. That never turns out well.
Rarely does that turn out well. Yeah.
On chipping. So is that something that you're trying to coach, your players in terms of different shots and knowing what to do at that particular time, so you're able to be kind of clear-minded when the time comes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way I would look at it is in a round of golf, you're going to have, 3, 4, or 5 different types of short game shots. And so when I tell someone, let's say they're going to go spend their time doing it, which is probably going to be 30 minutes to an hour minimum, I want them to be doing two things: hitting a variety of shots, and I want them to be doing that with a proximity goal in mind. And so let's take a couple of examples. So let's say you're going to hit like a low running shot that's kind of long sided, and you want your average on that shot to be like 6 feet or 5 feet. I'm going to stay in that situation until I can hit, 4 or 5 balls that kind of get around that proximity. I don't need to do that shot all day. Like once I've achieved that, I'm showing the proficiency that I can do that. I'm going to move on to something that maybe adds a little bit of loft and spin. I may go to a bunker. I might go to something with some abnormal lies, like a downslope to a short-sided pin. You have to anticipate that you're going to come up with all these shots, and the only way you're going to feel like you're prepared for those is basically by testing them when you're in practice. That's also going to reveal to you when you don't have a shot. I don't know how to hit an open face cut off a downslope to a pin that's only 4 yards on. Okay, you either need to fix that by going and figuring out how at a lesson, or you better get really good at learning how to hit a bank shot, because those are your only two options. And so I would say, as much as kids try to show up prepared from a ball striking standpoint, they have to show up prepared just like that with short game shots, including bunker shots. When a kid goes and hits bunker shots, it's like, hey, I spent like 10 minutes hitting my bunker shots. Like, how often are we getting a very, very basic bunker shot with like a perfect lie? Most of the time when I see it, you're on a downslope, ball above your feet, ball below, upslope, different distances. And so it'd be the same thing, like going through my 3 or 4 different types of bunker shots I might get. So that should lead to eliminating a lot of this, is just by variety. Like if you don't have variety in your chipping, because that's all you get when you play golf is a variety. And oh, by the way, don't give yourself some like perfect lie all the time. Like unless you're playing the ball up, especially this time of year on like dormant Bermuda down here in Texas, you're just not getting very good lies. And so you're having to make short game selection decisions almost strictly based on the lie down here right now. Like it is so difficult to chip, which is about to get better starting in March when like the grass actually comes back. But yeah, make it game like. Like that's probably the other thing, is like make your practice game like. You don't need to sit there. I can't stand. I'm standing on a soapbox. I cannot stand when I see people hit 50 of the same short game shot. They always are terrible. They're terrible at chipping when they do that. No one ever good has done that. It's ridiculous. That is not golf. That does not have a high transfer to like you chipping well. Okay, I'm going to calm down. I'm not going to yell anymore. But like that kind of stuff, it just obviously I have a lot of passion for short game practice.
So yeah, what you're talking about is block practice, right?
Yes, I mean, and I know there are people that say that that's helpful. I would disagree on like short game shots. I don't see how that's helpful, unless you can't chip like it. But as someone that shoots an 80, they probably are pretty proficient at like a couple types of chips. They may not be good at the downslope, open face, spin the face, open cuts, but they probably can hit some pretty basic shots.
Yeah, a couple food for thought items. So I went back. So Luke's kind of on starting his 4th year of kind of tournament golf. I went back over the first 3 years and I said, what if he had basically for every chip that he had, how many strokes would he have gained if he was a foot closer? Just to kind of see like what was potentially at stake. And essentially would have shaved 36 strokes over 117 rounds. So basically 0.35, about a third of a stroke a round. So if you think about like you magnify that probably for an 80 shooter, like there's probably a couple feet of proximity, right? Think about like chipping to 7 feet versus chipping to 5 feet, or chipping from 5 feet to chipping to 3 feet. That is where the biggest strokes gains come from. Like that's the kind of the tipping point, is kind of getting it within that sort of no-brainer distance, where you're not having to think about the putt versus that knee knocker or beyond that distance. So just like the practice of like, can I get this over time a foot or two closer because I put in the work, I understood the lie, I practiced these different shots for these different situational awareness and put in the hours, frankly. That I think could easily be a stroke over the course of a year, if not more, for a junior golfer in this category.
Yeah, on that note, I will say sometimes I will see someone let's take the 20-yard downslope to a tucked pin, and they're hitting 5 or 6 balls trying to average like 3 feet. You're probably going to be there all day because that's just not very realistic that you're going to hit 5 balls to an average of 3 feet. So I think some of it too, and I think we talked about this last time about like sometimes 8 to 10 feet is not a bad shot. Like sometimes 8 to 10 feet is a very, very good shot. That goes back to probably like missing in the wrong spots to where you put yourself in such a difficult spot to where, yeah, if you're 8 to 10 feet, that means you're probably getting them down at 40 to 50% of the time. But still, that might be a really, really good success rate from that spot. The further we go down this data thing, there's PGA Tour players are getting they're getting data about the best places to miss from previous years, saying you're going to get up and down 70% from short left and only 30% from long right. So then they prioritize their misses. So the better that you get, hopefully you're not hitting into spots where 8 to 10 feet is necessarily going to be good. But don't think you're going to go hit all of your chip shots to 3 feet. If you are, then you're not practicing a wide enough variety of shots. And you're probably not practicing bunker shots because there's not very many people are going to average 3 feet from the bunker.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk putting, because I think a lot of the same principles apply to putting. I will say what I see as perhaps the fatal flaw is a poor chip that leads to a 3-putt, right? So that's like the worst of both, the worst of both worlds. But what do you see if you had to differentiate between kind of lag? Is it lag putting is leading to the three putting, or is it just not being strong enough on, say, 4 to 5 footers?
I think it's a combo of both. I think lag putting, generally speaking, if you get a lag putt inside 10%, that's a good putt. So if you have 50 or 60 feet, like it's a good putt to hit it to 5 or 6 feet. So when someone's hitting to 5 or 6 feet and then they're missing the 5 or 6 footer, like that's clearly on the short putt. But I think in general, like I wouldn't even go to like the 50, 60 footers. I would say it's kind of okay for this 80 shooter to 3-putt from 50 or 60 feet. I see the 3-putts happening from like 15 to 30 feet. And that probably happens more from like this mindset that I'm going to make this, or I've got to give this a good run, versus the likelihood that you're going to 3-putt that is much, much higher than you're probably going to make it. So I'd probably say it's the intent behind the putt that led to poor speed that then puts stress on the short putt. And just generally speaking, on people that shoot around 80, they just definitely don't practice their putting enough. If they do practice their putting, when I see a new client, I ask them, let's say they shoot around 80, and I say, do you practice your putting? They generally don't do any form work. And then if they do putt, they just say, well, I just kind of putt around. So there's never really any objective reason behind like why they're putting. And so there's not a whole lot of solution. Like they don't do speed control drills, and then they can't start the ball on line to necessarily make the 4, 5, 6 footers. And oh, by the way, their green reading is probably not great. So I think you have to be practicing. If you really want to clean this stuff up, you just have to be attacking all 3 of these things. Like I have to be able to start the ball on line. Like if you're not doing some type of form station, you have to do that. You've got to be able to start the ball on line. I am specifically working on making putts from 3 to 6 feet, 4 to 6 feet. And then I'm doing some type of drill that is correlating with my speed control. So if that's like 20 to 50 feet, not trying to hit every putt to 2 feet or 3 feet, because again, that's not realistic. Just like chipping to 2 feet or 3 feet every time is realistic. But I'm trying to be able to do something, let's say over a 3 or 4 ball set, where I'm kind of seeing some consistency in like my ability to hit a putt, within a few feet of the hole. If you can be doing those things, then you should see that you're 2-putting more often. You're still probably going to 3-putt some, just because as you become a better player, your touch is probably going to get better. The only other thing is green reading. I think a lot of people 3-putt on putts that they think they hit well, that they just completely misread the speed more than necessarily the break. So learning some type of system for green reading is probably the area that I see is like no one has a clue on like how they read the green. They just kind of like, oh, I think it's moving left because it looks like it's moving left. So putting is much more objective to me than chipping. Chipping is the most gray area of golf. Putting, we can make it much, much more objective than chipping if we kind of like learn those 3 skills and like how we monitor them and how we enhance them.
I actually like really enjoy lag putting. It's something that I think I'm pretty good at, and I think it's a facet of the game that I really enjoy. A couple of things that I would see that I think lead into these issues, especially in tournament golf. It drives me crazy when kids aren't observing what is going on with their playing partners. Like basically think about the ball rolling on the grass as it's approaching the hole. That is a ton of information if you're paying attention, right? How the ball is reacting past the hole or what have you. What I see potentially leading into three putts is a ball that just, it generally looks fine, but then it just runs out. It runs out 5 feet instead of 2 feet, right? And it's just because there may be a little bit of a downslope past the hole that the golfer didn't pick up on, that maybe they could have picked up on if they had paid more attention, or leaving a putt short when it's into the green or something, and your competitor had just gone and just demonstrated that. So I think being super aware, and you can see that even on chip shots kind of leading up, as other players are heading into the green. So I think that awareness, you're just constantly searching for information that's going to help you make that putt. I think the other thing around green reading is, especially on longer putts, longer breaking putts, what I see leading to three putts is a lot of under reading that putt, where it gets low side and it keeps getting further and further away from the hole as it's slowing down. You probably can picture that in your head. There's a wide range of breaks that you could play into that hole that will get towards the hole, like based on the speed and the amount of break. But if you think of that sort of that cone on a longer putt that's breaking, I try to hedge more on the outside of that, more break as opposed to less break. And what I see and observe is even if you're short, if you don't get the speed quite right, it is still getting kind of closer to the hole as it's slowing down. And I tend to think that from like 30, 35 feet or more, that feeling of like it's slowing down and it's getting closer to the hole, that leads to a lot of just like tap in two putts, and then you just move on to the next.
Yeah, I call what you're talking about context clues. And I think the better, maybe we're getting a little bit deeper into like the 76 to 74 to 72. But in general, if I see one putt hit around a whole location, I basically know what all the putts around it are going to do. And so one of the things that kind of frustrates me when I'm watching juniors is, let's say that I'm putting kind of across a slope and there's a kid putting to the right of me straight down a slope, and he hits it 6 feet past. Well, that just told me that my putt is probably 3 or 4%. I'm probably going to miss it low. And so when I see a kid kind of like staring off because, well, that putt's not on my line, like that's not telling me anything. It's an uninformed mindset. Like, no, that kid just hit it 6 feet past because this is a lot more slope than you realize, and now you're having to putt across that. Same thing if the kid was putting to the left of me up the hill and he left it short. It would be the same type of context clue. Like, okay, this has a lot of slope. So the more that you can pay attention to that stuff, even when it's not on your line, it should inform the decision you're about to make. Because the thing with putting, and this goes back to the objective thing, is most of it is pre-shot decisions. I mean, 80%, 85% of tour players use the line of the ball. They're deciding their read long before they've ever hit their putt. They're doing practice strokes. I mean, Bryson literally says like how many inches he's going back. Like they are making those decisions on like their speed intent and where they're aiming like long before they've hit it. So, if you think about if you're struggling with that, you're probably missing everything on the pre-shot, more than the actual like stroke necessarily, especially on longer putts. Like the ability to start the ball on line like a 40-footer isn't that important. So I would say paying attention to context clues like you're saying, and then don't be predictable. Like Joseph and I were watching my son play the other day, and we're like being able to say like what's about to happen just because we can see it. Like, how can we see it and they don't see it? And it's not like, Joseph's a PGA Tour player or I'm a PGA Tour player. We can still see it just because we understand like what's the likelihood of about to happen. So, I would think through like a question of like, what is likely going to happen on this, and just be opposite guy. Like you just said on like the 50-footer, 40-footer, like you're likely going to miss it low. Like, okay, there is no way I'm missing this putt low. And then you putt to the top of the cone, like you were saying. I think having that mentality would lead to a lot less 3-putts, a lot less issues chipping, just because you're not going to be the predictable golfer that we kind of see in junior golf.
Yeah, no, that's great. So hopefully these are great tips for folks to kind of improve the short game area, whittle down those strokes. Stay tuned. If you get down to from the 80-ish down to the 78 level, we're going to get finer and finer as we go through this series of episodes. Andrew, just wanted to plug Andrew Lewis Golf on Instagram. If any folks want to reach out or have any questions or want to get more information about these concepts, please reach out there, or you can reach out to me at Driven Golf Analytics. And I look forward to continuing this series.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Jim.
The Driven Golf Podcast is produced by Joseph K. If you like this episode, like it, subscribe, pass it on to a friend who might be interested. It really helps us out a lot. We'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode. Until then, remember, in this great game, the journey is the gift. Enjoy the journey.
Check it. Check it. Behold Kate Smith, driven to greatness. Get on the wait list, killing with the illest illustrations. Spot so hot, sizzling with Shane Bacon. Minnesota legend, history in the making. Detroit Lakes high, 5-time state wins. Big Ten champ, prime-time statement. Groundbreaking Naismith, career nascent. What's her name? Kate Smith. She's gonna make it, not if a win. Fully accepted, seeing improvement in every single dimension. Kate's ready, steady progression into contention. Clear ascension, straight climbing up to Epson. No matter what's in her hand, wedge, stylus, a pin. Kate's got a plan, and it's about to begin. The Driven Golf Pod is here. Oh yeah. Kate Smith on the air. Oh yeah. Ground under repair. Oh yeah. Epson Tour beware. Oh yeah. The Driven Golf Pod is here. Oh yeah. Kate Smith on the air. Oh yeah. Ground under repair. Oh yeah. Epson Tour beware. Oh yeah. No matter what's in the hand, where's dollars and pen. Kate's got a plan and it's about to begin.